Hey everybody, welcome to the show. It takes courage with me, your host, Dr. Izdihar Jamil. And today I have a very special guest who lives maybe not that far away from me, Andrew Paul, who's a former Navy SEAL turned entrepreneur. And Andrew is someone that I've met pretty recently, and I think we were at a training with FORBES. So he comes in day two of the training, walks in, pulls out his chair, sit down on that squeaky chair, and kind of like, had this like little bag of like his breakfast. I don't know whether it was a muffin or something. And then conveniently, like, take out that muffin with all the scrunchy noises. And then everybody was like, oh, because there was a silence. And that's kind of the point when I'm like, oh, this guy is the real deal. This guy is, regular, former Navy SEAL, very accomplished in what he does, have a successful business. He kind of have like, should I say hi to him or no? He's like too big for me. But Andrew, I just want to say welcome, and thank you for accepting my invitation, and thank you for showing the quirky side of you as well.
I've got lots of quirky sizes.
Oh my God. So, Andrew, share a little bit about yourself. I know you were a former Navy SEAL, and one of the stories that you told me was that the only way that you don't become a Navy SEAL is when you ring the bell. That
Yeah.
means, you quit on yourself, but you stayed on. So that kind of like, showed that tenacity or that persistence or that commitment. Or maybe you're just like, people tell me I can't be a Navy SEAL, I'm going to show them, that kind of part. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and then transitioning from an active duty to having now your own business.
Well, I grew up in New England, a small town, Northampton, New Hampshire, and so everybody in my family basically served in the military. Uncles, cousins, in particular, my grandfather, who was like the patriarch of our family. He flew B-17s in World War II, and uh, went to the war at a very young age and enlisted, and then became an officer and ended up becoming a pilot. And so I grew up with this idea that I would probably serve in the military, or at least I was raised in this environment that held military service in high regard. And so, I often joke that, somewhere along the line, I got it in my head that I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And I probably saw the movie Navy SEALs, the movie with, Charlie Sheen, the most realistic Navy SEAL movie ever, and but then, so it started off as something like that as a younger kid. And then as I got a little older, it matured into a calling. And I knew this is I wanted to serve in the military and in that capacity. And so I went to Vanderbilt University on an ROTC scholarship. And it's actually kind of a little funny story there. I wanted to be Navy SEAL. My parents wanted me to go to college because that was the formula of, for success, at least so they thought. So I went down and looked at school, and when I went into this big room in this big auditorium, and there was all these booths and tables set up. These are all the clubs you could join, if you went to school there. And I see this guy standing there in uniform, which catches my eye right away because that's all I can think about is going in the military at this point. So I make a beeline over to that table, and I get over to that table, and right there on the table is this poster of a Navy SEAL. And it's the classic poster you've probably seen. It's a Navy SEAL. He's got his wetsuit on. He's got the Draeger rebreather on. He's coming up over the beach, the fins slung over the wrist, automatic weapon. And I'm like, what club is this? And he goes, oh, this is ROTC. I'm like, what's that? He goes, oh, well, if you go to school here, the Navy pays for you to go to school. And then afterwards, you just go in the Navy for 4 years to pay back the scholarship. And I was like, you can be a Navy SEAL through this program? Oh, yes, absolutely. Just straight up sold by the recruiter, right?
Yeah, I mean, with that poster, Andrew, like
Right.
nobody can deny that typical poster, Navy SEAL poster with the wetsuit and everything with the, what do you call that the mask or ski mask, not ski mask, that scuba diving mask, whatever that was. Like, who could deny that poster?
Sounds like a pretty cool club to me.
Yeah, I mean, when pilots, the Navy pilots, they have a different poster, right? With the pilots with their airplane and their ass, whatever that air planets. Or that was like, it's just so interesting, the things that kind of like the moment that hooks you in, which is, so cool in having that going to by the way, you studied computer science, if I
I did.
remember correctly. Remember,
Yeah,
so Andrew and I have something in common. We're both computer scientists. And so what was the experience like in that college, that 4 years? Because I like, you were like, I had this vision of going into the Navy and Navy SEAL after college, but you had to kind of go through that 4 years
yeah,
before you could even go to the starting line
right.
of your dreams. So the programming and then the things you have to do in that security stuff, you had to learn and exams. So what was that like?
Well, it was tough because I was in an engineering major, and as you know, I mean it's pretty intense. I mean, there's daily homework and labs, and all like I wasn't in like an arts and science degree where you write a couple of papers for the whole semester or read a book. I mean, it was a daily grind, and I was having to get myself physically and mentally prepared because this was just a stepping stone for me to do what I really wanted to do, which is to go become a Navy SEAL. So it was hard. I had a lot on my plate in college, where a lot of other kids had a lot more free time. I had to stay laser focused on what I wanted to do.
Yeah, and first of all, thank you so much for your service. If I haven't already mentioned it, thank you so much for your service. And I feel like this laser focus and this commitment was something that got you through BUTS, which is the training before you joined the Navy SEAL. And how long was that training for the BUTS, Andrew? Was it like a 6 weeks, 8 weeks training?
A little longer than that, and I'll take credit for every moment of it because it's challenging. So the For those of you who aren't familiar, to become a Navy SEAL, the main crucible that you've got to get through is this program called BUDS, as Dr. Is just said, Basic Underwater Demolition slash SEAL Training, and that is the selection process, really. Now, once you make it through BUDS, which is 6 months long, then you're still not a Navy SEAL yet, technically. Then you got to go on to some advanced training for another 3 to 6 months. And then you finally get what we call the Trident, the Navy SEAL, or sometimes it's called the Budweiser, the Navy SEAL warfare insignia, that now you're a Navy SEAL. So it's like 6 months of basic underwater demolition, and then another handful of months of advanced training. And then finally, you're a Navy SEAL and you show up to your SEAL team and you're a brand new guy with no experience. So you learn to just keep your mouth shut and just work your butt off.
6 months of intense, like, well, I was way off of the 8 weeks mark, right? Like, I didn't know that it was a 6 month, but that 6 months, it isn't just, a training, a 9 to 5 training. You walk into the office, you go and sit at a classroom, and then you finish at 5, and then Andrew loves his muffin. So he would go and get another muffin, to enjoy himself. But it isn't that you wake up at whatever time you wake up. Sometimes you don't even sleep at all. Sometimes it's around the clock for days. Sometimes in a cold situation at the sea, of part of being a Navy SEAL, that you gotta be in the water, a lot of the times. And some of it is not even known. So I wanted to talk about this mental toughness that you had. Is it really like what you think in here? It really affects what you do out there in the action, because there are times your body can't even handle it because it's just too much. So where does that start, Andrew? Does it start in here, or was it like you hooking on to your big dreams, your big vision of always wanted to be of service to others?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so a few things wrapped up in there. Number one, I would just say that it's way more than physical. Going through that training or anything hard, everybody's going to reach their physical limitation at some point. I mean, there's just at some point you will reach fatigue where you're
Mhm.
physically exhausted. And so the only thing that helps you go any further is all up here. It's a complete mental game. And so building that mental stamina, that mental fortitude, I would just tell people, first of all, it's not something I'm just sort of naturally gifted with. It is something that you absolutely can get better at. It's something that you can, I mean, just like any other muscle, like, when you work out, right, you get stronger. The same thing happens mentally. You have to continue to push yourself into mental challenges that stretch you a little bit, and you become mentally tougher through that process. So people who have accomplished great things, they're not just born mentally tougher. They have, I mean, we all have some natural gifts and abilities, but it is absolutely something that you can improve upon by putting yourself into challenging situations and pushing through them, and you build mental toughness. Now, pushing through that in SEAL training to become a SEAL, look, it starts off with, hey, this is cool, I want to do this job. But let me tell you, like, it sucks, is like, it's miserable to the point where I don't care how cool you think it is, it's not that cool anymore. I mean, you get to a point when it's like the cool factor's gone, and if that's the only reason you're doing it, you're gonna ring the bell. There's got to be a reason bigger than that, and that's really what I found. If
Mhm.
I could boil down so many things down to one simple truth, for me, it is in that you've got to be thinking about something bigger than yourself, and you've got to be doing it for someone else that is part of like a larger purpose. And that is where the real power for me comes from. It's not just about, I want to become a Navy SEAL and I'm going to be awesome. Like that goes away. I'm telling you, like that you get, that gets worn down and you're gone if that's all it is. For me,
Absolutely. And I'm kind of like getting something here that you were saying, if you go for something because of the bells and whistles, whether it's a new career, whether it's a new what you call partner, a spouse or something, if you go for the bells and whistles, when all the bells and whistles die down, it's gonna die down. It's gonna pretty die down pretty quickly because
yeah,
it's gonna the reality is gonna set in. What is left? And
that's
what is left is the thing that is way beyond, bigger than who you are. Is the collective, the community, the higher power, whatever um, that is. So I think like you touch on something important here, like you're now an entrepreneur. Like people are going to be thinking, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur too because we can work from anywhere. We can do this, we can demand this. And if they only knew the
right.
reality behind being an entrepreneur, um, it is such hard work, and people who've been an entrepreneur, they would understand there's dry seasons and there's high season. The dry season is the season where the mental toughness comes in because you could just give up and get a 9 to 5 job. So talk us through about this, the thing that hooks you more, that kept you moving forward. Was it is your then a family, or was it your then girlfriend or partner who is now your wife? What was that something big, or is it about the collective of taking care of our community and making sure that nothing penetrates our communities?
Well, in the SEAL teams, or getting through buds to become a Navy SEAL, it was about really the belief that America is the greatest land on earth. We are the land of the free and the home of the brave. And
Mhm.
listen, we are a country with plenty of flaws, and we've got a checkered past. But I believe that in this country, you have a better opportunity than anywhere else for freedom and to live in a free way. And that is what I wanted to protect. I wanted to protect people who are oppressed, people who can't protect themselves, people who are being pushed around and bullied by whether it's a dictator or gangs or wherever. And so that's the manner in which that I wanted to contribute, is I wanted to be in that capacity where I could help protect people and protect the ideals of freedom and liberty and pursuit of happiness and all the great things that this country was founded on. And so that's what pushed me through. And you got to realize I went through SEAL training right after 9/11. So we also
Mm.
had just been socked in the face, kind of sucker punched. And, the images of, people falling from buildings, and the idea that people wanted to attack this way of life, I was ready to defend that. So it wasn't about just being cool. It was about defending a
Mhm.
great purpose of liberty
Mhm.
and freedom and justice. So that was for that piece. Now, we talked about the entrepreneur roller coaster ride. I mean, that is
Yeah.
tough, right?
Oh.
And so likewise, if you think, oh, I'm going to have all this free time, let me tell you something. I work way more than 9 to 5, way more. That's what it takes. Now, that's what it takes, so that's what I do. Like I don't I don't stop when I'm tired. Like I stop when I'm done. You understand? Like it doesn't matter. Like you do what needs to be done. That's discipline, and that's what it takes. But I also like for me, my passion these days is helping my fellow veterans. So
Mm-hmm.
primarily, right, like I have a mortgage company and I do VA loans and I serve primarily the veteran community. So
Mm-hmm.
again, this is way more than just showing up to work and doing a loan or helping, or just uh, making money by closing a deal or helping somebody buy a house. Like I'm serving a community that I'm very close to and a community that I see gets taken advantage of. And so like for me, again, the higher purpose is serving a certain a community and looking out for and protecting them from being taken advantage of and ensuring that they have all the right information to make the best decisions. And that's what pushes you through the hard times, through the challenging times. It's got to be more than just simply like, oh, this is fun. I've got, I'm going to get paid or I have the
Yeah.
freedom to show up when I want to. It's got to be more than that. And that's what it is for me. For me, it's serving the veteran community.
Absolutely. And that's kind of like the bigger thing that you fight for. Like, even for me, what I fight for is people's voices to be heard, like
Right.
for legacy, for generations. That even when you and I are not here anymore, we're sitting on the ground, but our voices would carry through time for the people who are not even born yet. That otherwise, who wants to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
getting ready to do all these things, and then and our day lasts through the day, through the night, of all the other things. And Andrew, you have 2 kids, and obviously you have, a loving partner as well. So we have that part of us that needs some, spending time taking care of them. My kids are a bit younger than Andrew's. I think your kids are a little bit older, right? They're in
Yeah.
high
I
school.
have, I have 3 teenagers. So,
Oh,
pray for me. Okay. It's just, it,
3 teenagers. What are they?
it gets harder.
16,
Okay.
18, and 20, or something like that?
15, 16, and 17 is.
Okay. Oh, okay. Like literally, they're all like in that phase. So
Yeah.
it is, wow, that is incredible. And let's switch gears a little bit, Andrew. Before we jump into entrepreneurship, I just want to kind of like, okay, like, so how did you meet your wife? Because it's hard, right? Being a Navy SEAL, you're always away. You don't know when it's your time off. You don't know. You may not be there for Christmas. You may not be there on birthdays. You probably aren't going to be there when the kid is born because you just don't know. So how did you meet your wife?
Well, this is actually my second wife, right? So I had a practice one that I made a lot of mistakes on, and I learned those lessons so I could be
What's
better.
a practice one? Like, is that like kind of what?
That's called when you're young and dumb and you make a lot of mistakes, and
Oh,
so
that's the
no, I
okay.
so I was married when I was in the SEAL teams. I left active duty really to kind of try and save my marriage, and I had 2 kids. Both my sons were born on 2 back-to-back deployments. I wasn't home for either of them, and so that was tough on the family.
Mhm,
So and I left active duty in 2007, and I got
mhm.
right into the mortgage business because that's a natural transition, right? Like
Yeah, I know
way
that.
blowing things up, you know.
Wow.
So, and I don't know if any of you listening remember what was going on in the mortgage and real estate world in '07 and '08, but it
2008.
wasn't a
Yeah.
great time to get into real estate, right? So
Hmm.
I really struggled. I ended up having a really tough transition, but ended up getting divorced. Long story short, and
Hmm.
so uh, fast forward, my wife. Yes, how did I meet my wife? So my current wife, we met on eHarmony. So on
Oh,
one
like
of
the
the dating website, right?
oh, okay. Like, look, I'm like I don't know all this stuff, but okay, wonderful. So you're a success story for eHarmony.
That's right. Yeah, we met on eHarmony, and it was literally like magic. I mean, we did the whole guided communication thing and the must-haves and can't stands and pose these questions. By the time we met for our first in-person date, it was like, I mean, I felt like I knew her and she knew me. And I will say, I know as cliche as this sounds, we went on the first date. I mean, we had so much in common. We were so aligned from a values perspective. When I dropped her off as I pulled out of her apartment. I can still remember it to this day. I mean, I can see this picture, this video playing in my mind as I was pulling out of her apartment complex. I said, that's the woman I'm going to marry.
Oh,
I knew it.
that's incredible, right? Who would have thought like you would go into eHarmony of all the places that it's kind of like, dude, what are you doing? That goes your man card. But it's kind of interesting when you have that connection with someone you kind of knew. Like for me, I remember like my aunt called me like, hey, come over to mommy's house, which is my grandma's who live in another state 5 hours away. So I took the train. I was in college then. And okay, I go to mommy's house all the time. It's no big deal. And I was just like, oh, I want to meet someone who's gonna come over. I'm like, okay, like they're gonna come over, have dinner, whatever. So my husband came over with his mom, his dad, his brothers, two of his brothers, and his sisters. I'm like, what on earth is this? And then my aunt literally had to drag me down from the stairs. I know, and then I saw him. I'm like, I never met him before, but I kind of knew. And I think I get what you're saying. You kind of knew, right? The person that you met. But my husband is kind of, he's a little bit slower. He takes longer to get all these things. But that connection that you have with someone, I want to talk about that part, the instinct that you have, because I'm assuming when you're in Navy SEAL and still up to today, that is one of the things that is your most valuable, most powerful tool that you have. Probably saved you a lot of the times, your gut feeling, your instinct, your intuition, however you want to call it, and probably in business as well, because some people, well, you'll be like, I don't think I'm going to do business with this person. It's just a gut feeling. So I wanted to talk about, I know like it's hard to kind of like, oh, you always have to think logically, but I feel that you also have to listen to the gut feeling, the heart, how people are going to call it.
Sure, I think there is truth to that, and there, depending on your natural personality, it may be harder for you to trust your gut or your feeling, and maybe you tend to want to look at things more linearly, logically. But but we have intuition, right? We have this
Hmm.
sense. It's almost like this subconscious voice that is talking to us in a way that we can't necessarily iterate out logically these bullet points as to why something should be. But here's
Hmm.
what I would say about that is I do listen to my gut, but you know what I found about my gut and my instincts?
Hmm.
They're also a result of training, and training
Mm.
over and over and over again, and becoming really good at something. Your instincts get better. So like, what
Hmm.
are your instincts? And listen, I'm no scientist, I'm no psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever, but that's my layman's assessment, that the more I train, the more I study something, the more I throw myself into it, the better my intuition gets. In other words, the intuition is this almost unexplainable subconscious.
Yeah.
It's also a combination of experiences that gets better with hard work, with experience, with right. So just continuing to sharpen that sword, or that saw edge, your instincts get better, right? The
Hmm.
less trained you are, the less capable you are of walking in and assessing a situation. Where if you've assessed thousands of situations, well, then you walk in and all of a sudden your intuition's really good. Well,
Mm.
because you've done it and practiced it so often. And so
Yeah.
there's no intuition is awesome, but it's also no shortcut or replacement for that hard work and that daily discipline.
I think that you touch a point, kind of like when you combine those two, right? Of combining your intuition, your experience, the things you have gone through, the challenges, the disaster. Because you went in the mortgage 2007, 2008 when I was in England then. We just bought a property, day and night it just crashed. Like the property that we bought, that we felt that people say the prices isn't going to go down, everything, it just literally crashed. So having that pushing through and having that patience or persistence to push through, especially when you just started a business, and in your case a lot of things were going on. So was there any in particular moment as you're building your mortgage business? Because like you said, it's a natural transition from my active duty to mortgage business. I don't know how it's like. You might as well sell ice cream and muffin, Andrew. That would be like would be cool. Um, so is there any part of building your business that you were able to kind of harness the experience that you had in combat, like you call it the loss of combat, but is there any way that you're able to harness the experience, the challenges, the disaster that you've learned during combat into building your business? Because in a business you probably started with just yourself, and then you have a platoon, a couple of people as you're building the team. So yeah, talk about the experiences in the loss of combat that has helped you in the world of entrepreneurship.
Well, the number one thing I would say is ties back to what we talked about earlier, and doing something that is bigger than yourself. Because when you mentioned it earlier, I mean, entrepreneurship, building a business is hard. And those of you who out there who are either self-employed or building a business, I mean, it is hard. There are daily setbacks and challenges. And so for me, I found myself in this brand new industry in the mortgage business. I had no clients. I didn't know where my next deal or was coming from. I was living in a house that had been foreclosed on. And
Mm,
I'm showing up to the office at 6 a.m. because I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna get to work, right? Most people didn't
mhm,
start trickling into like 9:30, 10 in the morning. But I was hungry, and I had to work. I had two young kids to feed,
mm,
and as hard as it was. So to take this back to the combat experience, I had just come off of a very challenging deployment where we were in the thick of a lot of very heavy combat, and we lost several guys in my platoon. So Mark Lee, who is the first Navy SEAL killed in Iraq, was in my task unit. He was killed on August 2nd, 2006. And then Michael Mansour, who was in my platoon, uh, was killed on September 29th, 2006. And he was on a rooftop conducting a sniper overwatch operation, providing security to guys who were patrolling down in the street. And an insurgent threw a grenade up onto the roof, and it hit Michael Mansour in the chest. It landed at his feet, and there were two of my teammates to his right and his left. They had no way of escaping, and he jumped on the grenade, absorbed the blast, and saved their lives, and was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor. So
yeah.
I've got a guy in my platoon who's a Medal of Honor recipient, right? So
Yeah,
now,
let's just take a moment to honor him, Andrew, because for him to throw his life, not throw his life, but to protect, use his body to protect the teammates on his right. And like, I don't even know if I could do that. I
I don't
don't
think
even know
any
if
of us
I could do that. I don't know. I probably either froze or run the opposite. Like I wouldn't know when you put in that situation. It's like a pressure cooker kind of like instant life and death situation. Let's take a moment to honor Michael Mansour for his courage, and also your other team member who was killed in the active duty, and such amazing guys. And so you had like it was a tough time for you and your platoon as well, right? Because you're like brothers. Oh my God, you're like 24/7 with each other.
right.
Like that's what you sleep it. You easy like it's 24/7. So you had a tough time, kind of like it never is easy when someone passes away. So you had a tough time, kind of like moving on in sort of a way, and then now you're into the mortgage business.
Right. So, I find myself in some quiet office at 6:30 in the morning, trying to scrape to find a deal, trying to learn the business. I'm no longer with my brothers and in this profession that I had wanted to do my entire life.
Hmm.
And so I'm struggling. I'm struggling financially. I'm
Mm,
struggling mentally and emotionally. And with my new purpose, like, what do I do now? Like, what am I here for? And so you want to talk about using my combat experience to build a successful business? It's in those moments that I would think about the heroes that I served alongside, guys like Michael Mansour, who are
mm,
no longer here, who gave their
mhm,
lives, who literally gave his life so that me and my friends could live.
mhm,
And so when things get a little tough, as they do, of course, I think about the sacrifice that he made. And I asked
mm.
myself, Andrew, I mean, are you? are you living a life worthy of that sacrifice? I was spared. How is
Mm-hmm.
it that, I mean, 14 guys in my task unit received Purple Hearts from that combat. I came
Mm-hmm.
home uninjured, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
How is that? And so I came to the conclusion that I was spared for a reason, and therefore I have purpose here and unfinished work to do. And in honor of them and their sacrifice, I will live a life that honors what they did and makes the most of this life that I've been given,
Mm-hmm.
because I've seen just how fragile it is and how easy it is to lose it. And so it really is a blessing. And that's the perspective that helps me push through when things get really tough.
That was just so, it's just so, it's just, I feel it and I'm having like goosebumps and I can just feel it, fighting for essentially they've given you the legacy for you to continue in a way, right? Somehow, some way that you can still honor them, take care of them, or continue their legacy, their voices, their mission. Like Michael Monsoon may not be able to do what you're doing now, helping other people, but you carry a part of it in you that's continuously helping other people, that's continuously taking care of your boys, that's continuously taking care of your spouse the best that you can, that's continuously giving back to the community. And I feel that if you don't have that, you'll be like, I'm out. I'm gonna go to, I don't know, Google or something and work there, and having that, because it is hard entrepreneurship. Even when I started, I just had it. Nada was only a few months old. It's just waking up 4:30, 5 o'clock, staying up late. Like, who wants to do that? Nobody. But now when I talk with coaches, entrepreneurs, it's too hard. I just want this. Like how are you gonna get things if you haven't gone through things? And what you said as well, Andrew, it gets sharper. Your intuition, your skill set, the way you present yourself gets better and better and better. And I think ultimately that's where people start to see, because fast forward now, you already like 2006, 2000, what is it, 12, 15 years, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean it's over 16 years now, really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
16 years, from that 6 o'clock, like there was no one at the office, no client, no leads. You don't even know, like, kind of like what to do, how to start things. And then, 15, 16 years later, jumping forward here, I want to kind of like highlight kind of your biggest disaster that you've learned, and what is the lesson that you learned from those disaster from your entrepreneurship. Is it about a team member? Is it about a process? Is it about a client? What's the kind of your biggest disaster moment that turned out to be the biggest game changer in your life?
Well, if we want to talk about disasters, we're gonna be here all day because I got
I
plenty.
know.
Let me tell you. But I mean that I think maybe is a really good point too, though, that we learn from those mistakes, or we really should learn from those mistakes, or we'll probably make them again, right? But but really, when I look back on what are some of the most difficult, most challenging times in my life, I wouldn't change it for anything. It's
Mhm.
and I think any of you out there who may be listening who have been through some hard times and are past those, you look back, you probably would agree. But it was hard, but man, it was the making of me. I am who I am today because of those hard times that I went through, and so I wouldn't trade it for anything. Now, an example of that honestly was probably my military transition. Right, I
Mhm.
briefly touched on it, but I was a Navy SEAL, and it was a job that I'd wanted to do my entire life. I had been through all these challenges to get a chance to serve in the military as a Navy SEAL, and then I was in the right place at the right time. I mean, the my last deployment before I left active duty, I was part of an incredible unit led by
Mhm.
Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. Part of it was called Task Unit Bruiser. They've gone on to write this New York Times bestseller called Extreme Ownership, an
Mhm.
amazing book on leadership. And I was just so fortunate to be a part of that task unit. The men that I served alongside were some of the greatest warriors and heroes that I've ever known. And just to
Mhm.
say that I was a part of that it's I was just lucky to be there. And so I was in the right place at the right time to be with an incredible unit in the right place to serve in that capacity. And next thing you know, I'm out of the military. I got two young kids.
Mhm.
I no longer have my steady 2 week paycheck, no more health benefits, a job and
Mm.
a purpose that I believed in for so many years. So now what?
Mhm.
I'm broke. I'm my ultimately I lost my house to foreclosure.
Mhm.
I ended up getting divorced. So my ex-wife, she's moved out, and she took all the furniture now. She's great. She and I get along great today. She didn't take all the furniture, like, it was like, hey, take the furniture, but there I was. I'm living in a house that was empty, had no furniture in it, right? So when I had
Mhm.
50-50 custody of my kids, and we slept on the floor.
Mm.
And it just, as a man who, I don't know if it's uniquely male, but it certainly feels that way, that like there's this need to protect and to provide. And when you're up late scratching, trying to do another loan, or trying to get a loan that you need so badly, and you look over and your kids are sleeping on the floor, and you're living in a house that you don't even own anymore. I mean, it's you really can start to question your worth, and
Mhm.
whether you even are worthy of being. I mean, I have this responsibility to raise these kids. Can I even provide for them? And that was some of the lowest moments of my life. And I'm in a very different position now, but I called on all of those experiences. I thought about the incredible men that I served alongside, that whose life and legacy I want to honor with how I live my life. I've got a new purpose now. I have two young boys who are over there sleeping on the floor, and I think I've got to be there to raise these boys to become men, capable men of going out into the world and being that next generation of warriors and leaders in our communities. And the best way that I can do that is to provide for them and to be a walking, talking example of what that success looks like. And so again, it's not just like I'm trying to get the money, or I'm trying to get the house or the car. I don't care about
Mhm.
any of that stuff. I mean, who doesn't like nice things or to go on a nice trip? Of course. But that stuff fades. It just goes away.
Mhm.
It's the bigger sense, it's the bigger purpose. And I've just laid out a few of them for you: the legacy of my teammates, raising my young boys to become men, capable men, honorable young men who make valuable contributions to our communities and our societies. Those are the purposes that drive me.
Beautiful. And kind of like, and because I've told you, like, before we start, like, Andrew, you have this protective mode of you because that's how you are, right? Protective, high alert, and everything. But in this conversation, I just want you to hang out with me and let me take care of you, because it's hard, because you had to fight for so long. I mean, you still are, because like that's already ingrained in you. And I just want to thank you for having this conversation with me, for hanging out with me, for just allowing me to take care of you and just to share your voice, because I feel like it's hard for people to connect with someone who's like, when they're so up high all the successes,
Right.
because it's hard to relate to that. But when you're talking about your children and you're in the floor, I mean, oh my god. And then this memory comes over to me, because when I first got in America, we only have 6 luggages, and we slept on the floor as well. We've got nothing, literally nothing. There's no furniture. Not that someone took our furniture, but with that home has no furniture at all. So it's that tough times, and building that family unit that kind of strengthens everything. Like how your boys are raised from that, because of that challenges, how what they develop their character, and how they look after one another and look after other people. So as we're wrapping up, Andrew, I wanted to ask you a couple of things, just like a switching gears kind of thing, a la eHarmony style. I don't know, I've never been on eHarmony, but favorite color.
Blue.
Okay, favorite food.
Lobster.
Okay, I've never had people having love lobster. Okay, what is the music that you listen to when nobody else is listening or nobody else is around?
What's the music I listen to?
When nobody else is like watching you, it's just you.
Well, I'd listen to this whether they were watching or not, but it's definitely the Rocky soundtrack. I had the tiger, baby.
Oh my God, the Rocky Starter. That is so cool. Favorite sportsman of sports person of all time.
You know, I think that's a I haven't thought about that. But what comes to mind is I love the movie Chariots of Fire, and the main one of the main characters in that movie is Eric Little, is a very strong Christian athlete who lives on his principles. And there's a moment where he's kind of trying to decide between whether he's going to go serve in the missionary or whether he's going to run and compete and go to the Olympics. And he comes to this realization, and he momentarily sets aside the mission trip and says, "Hey, I'm going to run." And his sister is upset about it. And he says, "No, you don't understand." He goes, God made me for a purpose, for the
Hmm.
mission for China. He goes, "But he also made me fast. And when I
Mm.
run,
Hmm.
I feel his pleasure."
Oh, that is so cool. And then finally, if you were a unicorn, what would be your name?
I don't, I have no idea. If I was a unicorn, well, I don't know. I guess I have no idea. Andrew. I,
Oh, it's a like flying sparkles or, like bluey blue or whatever that is. That could be it. Okay, and the last question of today, Andrew, from someone for someone who is transitioning from, one niche to the other, just like what you did, what is one thing that you can advise, your biggest advice to them in positioning themselves as the go-to expert? Because, they're kind of newbie, right? So what's the biggest advice when someone is new transitioning as to position themselves as the go-to expert in their field?
so, like, how to position yourself as an expert?
Yeah, as an expert, because it's kind of new, or whether where you are now, right? So how do you position yourself as the expert? Because there's thousands of other mortgage brokers out there. So how do you position yourself as
Yeah.
the go-to expert so that you're chosen, you're seen, heard, and chosen over everyone else?
Well, first of all, I think it starts with competency. You've got to go to work and actually just, like, unfortunately, popular culture today doesn't support what I think a lot of people would like. I mean, popular culture says call yourself an expert and you are one. You just make up your title, put it on your business card, and write a book and you're an expert. But that's not real. I think so. But that's what, like, social media says. Like, oh, I just write a book because I can. You can write a book, but that doesn't mean you know what you're doing. But in my opinion, it starts with actually a core competency. So you're not going to be an expert right off the bat. And I think so. It starts with going to work, doing the right things on a day-to-day basis consistently over time, getting that experience, serving your clients, your communities, whoever it is that's your customer, your client, serving them at the highest possible level, learning from the mistakes that you make, and getting better. That's how you become an expert, right? You don't just
Mhm.
become an expert because you are one. So I even the idea of, like, positioning yourself as an expert, like, I mean, that's kind of BS. I mean, the way you position yourself as an expert is you actually become actually good at your craft. You actually become good at what you do. And that there's no shortcut, there's no hack, there's no substitute for daily hard work and working every single day to become better and better at what it is you do. That's how
Yeah.
you really become an expert.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also for you to own who you are, rather than, thinking that you have to attach yourself to someone or, be with someone, but kind of like own who you are because essentially you are way more capable than what you think that you're capable of, kind of having your voice shine, being in the spotlight, like allowing yourself to just be out there the best that you can and keep on sharing your voices, keep on being heard, and just being consistent on being really really good at what you do. And I think people will notice that because, like, when you're so good at what you do, sometimes you don't even have to make like a party out of it, but people will see what you are capable. Like both of our kids play sports. I remember, like, your son plays football or something, and my son abroad plays ice hockey.
Oh,
And my son abroad isn't the type that go hoo ha and everything, but just keeps doing his work. And then the other day at the tryouts, one of the coaches was like, hey, I want you to be in my team. He's 12. I want you to be in the 14 and up.
Great.
And the other one was like, hey, your son needs to go to traveling team because of his level. So I think it's that kind of like confidence. Well, confidence goes up and down, but it's the courage to kind of like do the work, and it is hard work. So Andrew, thank you so much for joining me. We could talk all day.
I
Now that
know.
Andrew is warming up, you can feel like everybody when Andrew is warming up, that we could talk, hanging out and all day, having a conversation. It's just so fun. This is the Andrew that I like. Okay, this is the Andrew that I like. The quirky Andrew with a and then the sharing the muffin. I've told Andrew, I'm not sharing your muffin. I want my own
Okay.
one full muffin the next time that we meet. The kind of like the dad Andrew, the one who sleeps on the floor Andrew. This is the Andrew that I liked. And when I first met Andrew, he was at the stage, like really formidable. And then when I go out in the courtyard, there was in La Jolla, he's like on the phone, like all this swearing words was coming out of his mouth, and I'm like, what the heck? It's like, oh, and I get a little bit scared. But this is the Andrew that I like, and then you can see like the guy behind the shiny stuff. This is the person that absolutely extraordinary. So Andrew, thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed our time together and having valuable conversations that the viewers that can take away from the loss of combat to entrepreneurship to dating, eHarmony, everybody. I'm not a spokesperson for it, but uh, finding that intuition that you sharpen over time. So, Andrew, let's end with this. Entrepreneurship is one word, go.
A daily grind.
A daily grind. So daily dash grind, right? Because it's
There you
one
go.
word. Not like having it. Wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me. Thank you so much, Andrew, for joining me. Until the next episode, this is your host, Dr. Izdihar Jamil. And remember, be courageous in sharing your voices so that you can be the go to expert in your field and help many more people. Take care. May peace be upon you, right? Andrew, let's say bye to everybody.
Take care.